So this video is the first in a series about analysis of data collected in the assessment process. This one is about analysis of a single incident using qualitative analysis. And in this video, we're going to talk about photographs and single anecdotal notes. So when we analyze assessment data qualitatively, meaning with words, there are really only two options for possible analysis. The first one is that we look for patterns in observations. And it's essentially, since we're looking for meaning, we're often looking for patterns when we're trying to establish meaning. However, option one is only possible when we have a pattern of data. So for example, with sampling strategies like event and time samples, with videos, with running records, and with a series or multiple anecdotal notes. This option is not possible if we have recorded a single incident in time. The second option, which we can use with both multiple instances data and single instance data, is that we record and analyze observations that are significant. And if we're looking at single incident data, like single anecdotal notes or a single still photograph, this is really our only option for analysis. And when we record significant incidents, we're looking for significant incidents of progress or success. For example, meeting a milestone, demonstrating knowledge, progress in a curricular or content area. And we also look and record for significant instances of challenge. So behavior incidents, inattention during a learning activity, struggling with content, those kinds of things. But I think what's key here is that with option two, we're looking at significant incidents. Okay, so here's an example of a single incident piece of data. In this case, it is a photograph of two 3-year-old girls in a preschool classroom building a puzzle. And once again, just to reiterate, for observation-based assessment strategies, the only analysis option we have is qualitative because there's no numbers here. And we have two options. We can look for a pattern, or we can record observations that are a significant benchmark of progress or challenge. In this case, we cannot see a pattern. This is a single incident piece of data. It's a still photograph. There's no way for us to see any kind of pattern in the girl's development or learning. So then the next question we have to ask ourselves is, can we see evidence of a significant developmental benchmark, or maybe more than one significant developmental benchmark? And of course, this is an interesting piece of data to handle because it's taken completely out of context for us. So when I look at this photograph, I can see the potential for 3 significant developmental benchmarks. When I ask myself, why do I think the teacher or educator took this picture? I think there are 3 possibilities based on what we're looking at. The first one is a possible but unlikely possibility that this is capturing a significant fine motor benchmark. And the reason that I say that it's possible but unlikely is that when I look at the picture, I see a 3-year-old manipulating a large floor puzzle, what's probably a 12-piece puzzle. I see her right hand is grasping the puzzle piece with a pincer grasp, and her left hand is working as a placeholder. These are very typical fine motor skills that I would have expected a 3-year-old to have mastered. And the reason that it is still a possibility that this is a significant benchmark is that we don't know anything about these children. And it would certainly not be significant if they were typically developing children, but it is possible we're looking at children with atypical development, at which case it could be of significance. The second potential option that I see is it could be a benchmark of cognitive development. If you look carefully, you can see that she has clearly put a large section of the puzzle together. You can also see in the photograph that she has aligned the piece that's about to go in correctly. You can see the pieces of the yellow triangle coming together. It could be that this photograph was captured to document her sort of ability to process and sequence and align a puzzle piece. Once again, I'm not sure that's a major developmental benchmark, given that there are already 3 and this is a very large puzzle. If this were a much smaller puzzle, I might be more inclined to say that, but it's a stronger possibility than the fine motor example. And last but certainly not least, which I think is probably the most likely reason for taking this photograph, the most likely benchmark, is that it is a social emotional milestone in terms of the progression from parallel to cooperative play, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Once again, this picture is taken completely out of context. I don't know these children, and this is what I can get from looking at one single still photograph of 2 children working a puzzle. In all irony, I actually just thought of a 4th reason, and I've talked about this picture several times now, so it's interesting that I'm just noticing this, and it's because I was looking for a positive developmental benchmark, but there is actually a challenging gross motor benchmark in the picture as I'm looking at it right now, and that is that the child who is handling the puzzle is sitting in a W sit. Which is very problematic for hip development and is something that many PTs and OTs will work with children to not do. So it is possible that this photograph was captured to document this challenge, which is interesting because I didn't see that before right now. But also important on this slide is noting that anytime we're analyzing assessment data, it doesn't matter what kind of data it is, but anytime we're analyzing data, to make meaning, we have to use both evidence from whatever it is that we've collected as far as data and research to support how we're making meaning. And just to be clear, I'm using the word research because most of the people taking this course are pre-service teachers and are learning their craft as far as child development and learning progressions and content areas. So in many cases, it will require a little bit of research or support at this stage in your process. When you've been in the field for a while, oftentimes the ability to sort of analyze data based on high quality child development or learning progression knowledge is there in your working memory and your working dialogue. For example, just what I just did in sort of talking about this picture from 4 different developmental domain lenses. Okay, so this is my analysis of these 2 little girls building a puzzle. And notice I have used evidence and research to support meaning making. So my analysis is child A and child B engage in cooperative play while constructing a puzzle. The 2 children are seen working together to construct a single puzzle. This is a significant milestone because many 3-year-old children still predominantly work in parallel with peers. Because we see both girls focused on and engaged in a single puzzle, especially because there's a second puzzle available in the photograph, we can be assured that these 2 girls are actually engaging in cooperative play. They're focused on this. They have joint attention on the puzzle, as opposed to in parallel play in which we would see both girls building puzzles next to each other. And this is an example of how you can look at this within the context of the cycle of assessment that we've been talking about. I wanted you to see what this looks like in terms of the whole cycle. So the task in this case is building a 12-piece floor puzzle with a peer, building 12-piece floor puzzles with a peer. Sorry, there's more than one puzzle here. We don't know because the evidence is taken out of context. If this was a structured activity or an authentic activity. We don't know if the teacher pulled the puzzles out or the children pulled the puzzles out. We also do not know if this is embedded within the learning cycle of the day, which I'm guessing it is because it's clearly taking place in a classroom, or if the children were pulled from their normal experience in the day and told to build puzzles together. We don't know. All of those are possibilities, though. The data collection here is photographs, which we've already talked about. The analysis we've also already talked about. I just read it from the previous slide. And then you can see I've written a quick instructional, curricular, and assessment possible application. So given that I now understand that these two girls, I know nothing about the rest of the class, but I know that these two girls can engage in cooperative play with each other. My possible instructional application is child A and B can work together as a peer group in additional tasks. The curricular application is that child A and B would benefit from direct instruction, scaffolding, or a story, introducing the language necessary to work together on a task with a peer. Once children start engaging in cooperative play, they often need linguistic support, language support on how to actually do that, how to negotiate things like sharing and turn taking. Listening to someone else's idea, those kinds of language and social emotional interactions. And then the assessment application is that child A and B respond well to photo documentation. We can see this as evidenced by the fact that they're not distracted from their task by the camera. The assessment strategy could be successfully applied to other assessments. Let's very quickly look at one more. This one is an anecdotal note, also from a preschool classroom. This anecdotal note was actually taken on April 21st, 2009. During planning, Jocelyn started writing a series of identifiable letters and other letter-like forms from left to right in her journal. I asked what she was writing, and she said, "I'm writing my plan." So the meaning here is that Jocelyn's demonstrating an understanding of the meaning of print and is beginning to use conventional letters in her writing. The evidence I have is that she described her work as writing my plan, and the writing in her journal contains both letter-like forms and conventional letters. And the research that I have to support that is the understanding that print conveys meaning is a key early literacy step during the emergent reading and writing period in preschool. Additionally, the ability to visualize and produce conventional letters requires the combination of letter recognition and fine motor skills. These skills are necessary for children to master before reading and writing can begin. Here's the anecdotal note unpacked within that cycle of assessment we've been talking about. The task here is individual journal writing during planning time. The data collection process was an anecdotal note. And the analysis is Jocelyn is demonstrating an understanding of the meaning of print and is beginning to use conventional letters in writing. She described her work as writing my plan, and the writing in her journal contains both letter-like forms and conventional letters. The understanding that print conveys meaning is a key early literacy step during the emergent reading and writing period in preschool. Additionally, the ability to visualize and produce conventional letters requires the combination of letter recognition and fine motor skills. These skills are necessary for children to master before reading and writing can begin. The three quick potential applications that I've drafted are instructionally, Jocelyn would benefit from adult or peer scaffolding in her writing work, perhaps in the Writing Center, discussing the meaning of her writing and supporting her use of resources, word wall, word cards, etc., to support her use of conventional writing. A quick potential curricular application, Jocelyn would benefit from instruction on the shapes of conventional letters, especially those that she's not currently writing, and the assessment application is that work samples of Jocelyn's writing should be collected and analyzed. These are both two really strong examples of analyzing or making meaning around a single incident piece of assessment data.